Suggested I go.
But then
We'll get
it'll
that
pop
here.
up this webinar.
That's very cool.
Recording something.
Yeah.
People are aware that it's being.
You know, it's funny, I had this conversation today with
Where is it?
the vice president of student affairs for the U and the vice president for undergraduate students for the U, and their chief safety officer. But one of the things that came up that was really interesting was how they.
And we're gonna like add it to the
I'm not
website.
recording it, I'm not. Is the audio of that? Okay,
Yes,
is
Oh,
audio
on
off
YouTube?
for us?
sorry,
Audio is off for us.
audio is on, I can mute us.
Just mute us, That's so cool. What a great time.
Wow, it was fabulous.
What do you like?
It's the safety contingent. Part, I know, I feel better already.
Well, I brought a guy to hide behind, so.
He's kind of thin for Duffel, man, but if you want to use him. What word? Protecting yourself. Sorry. We'll have it. Duffel provides different covers that allows you to not be hit.
Can I try and do this?
And that's not.
So I try to start
Don't
with the
worry.
recordings kind of big.
Yeah, you can, that'll be in Webster's. You know, that cover and different things concealed.
And I haven't heard that word in quite some time, and the like.
We'll strike it from the record, but I don't think we're recording it, so I'm okay. Sunday 6, right?
And then I like try like
Yeah.
30
Yes.
minutes before and
Okay.
come back over just so he's ready when it's his turn.
Your place,
Yes,
but. I'll probably be solo.
So there's two people that are watching on YouTube.
It's hard to get my introvert out into those things.
sometimes I struggle with the same.
You can see my phone like. Somewhere wrong, if I get something.
Just.
I don't know, like sometimes we just like shoot it via text. Or, you know, do the app or whatever, so.
With an engineer, you know, doing state tests, connections,
There is-
so our cameras looking at the screen and.
Who's calling the meeting order and are they ready?
I think Carolyn is ready as soon as we.
Hello, good afternoon. I would like to call September's Town of Alpha Town Council meeting. Is that what you need?
That is what I needed.
Fairly well done.
So do I,
Dan's gonna say a few words.
Dan is gonna say a few words.
For everybody here and for anybody that might listen to this, we felt as a town, it's important to recognize today's date. Not so much for its historical significance, but really for the loss of the 2,977 fellow American citizens that lost their lives on this day. So it's affected many people since then. But I'd really like to extend our deepest sympathies from the town to Deputy Ted Spencer and his family for their loss. So on behalf of all of us, Ted, we appreciate what your family's gone through. In the end, you know, this remains a solemn anniversary for the entire country, and I'd just like to conclude by saying maybe not see its like again. Thanks. Sir.
Thank you. Hey, the next item on the agenda is to vote to elect the council member to chair this meeting. Dan, would you like to chair the meeting?
No.
Okay. Elise, would you like to chair the meeting, or do we need somebody physically?
I can't, it's up to you guys. I'm on Wi-Fi, so I should be good.
Is that what you-
It's up to you. The council should decide.
Well,
Okay.
so if Elise is able to, she probably should since she's the pro tem. But if she's not able to because of technical reasons, then we could have somebody in the, who's actually at the anchor location do it. But if she's uncomfortable because of because of it being over Zoom, which I understand where it's kind of hybrid, then,
Elise, I'm happy to help you. I have the piece of paper in front of me if that's easier for you from a technical standpoint.
I should be good. I printed out all the paperwork from last week when I got it from Jen.
Okay,
All
fabulous.
right, cool.
So
yeah.
basically, no action needs to be taken then, I guess, because you're already pro town.
Okay.
Correct.
Sound.
Wow, 2 items in off the bat.
On that note, is there any citizen input?
I have citizen input. Thank you.
You can just announce yourself then.
Oh, perfect. Hi, I'm Cody Fox. I'm the executive director of Friends of Alta. Thank you all for having me here. Just wanted to let everybody know that we have a new Friends of Alta Speaker Series event coming up November 13th. This is going to be on Utah air quality, and due to what the road conditions can be like that time of year, we're going to hold it at the main library in Salt Lake, located at T10 East, 400 South. Our speaker is going to be John Lynn. He's a professor in the Department of Astrophysics Sciences and the associate director of the Wilkes Center for Climate Change and Policy. And John is going to discuss greenhouse gases, air quality, and the future of the Wasatch Front. And anyone who'd like to learn more, check out our website, friendsofalta.org. There's ticket information. It's free RSVP. So thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
I did want to just announce that we did receive a written comment from Mark Haig, that's been shared with the council. And I believe he requested that to be a part of the meeting minutes. So we'll attach that to the meeting minutes of this meeting.
Sounds good. Hearing no one else wanting to talk. We've got a presentation on a proposed amended subdivision ordinance presented by Todd Godfrey from Hayes, Godfrey and Bell.
May I just say a couple words to introduce Todd?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Hey, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Todd, for coming. So I did provide I think a fairly comprehensive staff report introducing this, and we provided the draft ordinance language. I just want to clarify to the council that the purpose here is not to take action to approve this. Given that we are uncertain what our attendance will be like at this meeting, we thought that the best thing to do would be to sort of introduce this to the council, have a first reading, well, not that we'll read it aloud, but get it before you for the first time and see if any substantive questions or comments arise. And then ideally in October, if we're more confident, we'll have fuller attendance by the council. At that point, we would schedule a vote. So hopefully, I'm sure Todd is prepared to take your questions, talk about kind of the background of the state legislation we're responding to in amending the subdivision ordinance, and specifically what the changes we're proposing.
Chris, how long has this been planning commission?
Three meetings. I think we had three, basically 2 discussions, and then the last meeting the commission held a public hearing and voted to recommend it to the town council. So I'm going to call that 3 meetings. I think we did like a little bit of an intro before that. So
Nice.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Chris. As Chris introduced me, my name is Todd Godfrey. I'm from the firm of Hayes, Godfrey, Bell. Our firm does a lot of municipal work, and we're pleased that the town of Alta selected us to help with the rewrite of your subdivision ordinance. As we dove into it and looked at it, we were obviously, our obligation is to make this comply with the state law changes that occurred during the 23 and 24 legislative sessions. As we dove into it, there weren't a lot of changes that need to be made. When you look at the red line, I think it looks like the changes are significant. They're actually not. It's more of a rearrangement than anything else. The new state law requires that we follow a kind of a scripted process for the approval of subdivisions that is essentially 2 steps, a preliminary plat review and a final plat review. We used to use a concept plan review pretty broadly in this state. The state law doesn't allow the city to require that anymore. Your ordinance still doesn't require, but suggests strongly the developers follow that process to help them through the preliminary and final plat, but it's not required anymore. The state law also indicates that your planning commission can, but does not need to be the land use authority for the review of a preliminary plat. As a sort of policy point, this draft retains the planning commission as the review authority for a preliminary plat. It keeps intact almost identically your application requirements for a preliminary plat. The the land use authority for the approval of a final plat, now in compliance with state law, will be your town manager. The state law indicates that the town council can no longer have a role in the final plat approval for subdivisions. They've taken you out of the subdivision business, whether we like it or not. So your ordinance now designates your town manager as the approval for a final plat. The essential highlights of your process now, there is a public hearing still before the planning commission. That is an optional thing in the state law. You're not required to hold a public hearing on subdivisions. Your planning commission thought it was a good idea to leave that requirement intact. That's kind of a summary of where you are. Again, your substantive requirements for applications generally have remained the same. There's very little change to those. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I've got one. Thanks, Todd. That's really a great summary. When I was looking at the summary that the town manager provided us, one of the things that came into play was that I'm pulling this from a line that it's the new annotated 10-9A-603.11 construes that the town council can't also hear subdivision approval appeals. So given that it's strictly the town manager, that's an absolute. It's not that we might be able to do that, it's that we cannot, correct?
The state law is not wholly clear on that, but it is my opinion that the town council, I think, probably is legally precluded from hearing even appeals on subdivision matters. When they adopted the new changes to the subdivision law, they didn't address appeals directly. But the language of the statute as it relates to the review of subdivisions is clear enough that I've adopted the opinion that it would be inappropriate to have a town council review an appeal of a subdivision.
Yeah, especially given the fact that it's exclusively the domain of the town manager now. Right.
Well, approval of a final application is, but appeals are in the town code. All land use decisions are appealed to the town council. The town council is our appeal authority. So, and right, what Todd is saying is that state law explicitly prohibits town councils from being the decision-making authority on subdivision approvals. It does not specifically take the town council out of the appeal authority. What he's saying is essentially you could read that prohibition on council decision-making authority to assume the intent is also to keep the town council from acting as the appeal authority. So there's authority to approve an application, and then there's authority to hear an appeal and make a finding on an appeal, which is the step before going to court.
Yeah, I think that's an important difference, and that we shouldn't go beyond what's required by the state. And state's not requiring us not to be the appeal authority. I can see positive and minuses to that. I think if we were a big city with an elected planning commission, I'd say the town council being the appeal authority wouldn't make sense. We're a tiny town. We're the only elected body in town. The planning commission is not an elected body in Alta. And I think if we're going to get into this, it's really going to open up a whole can of worms. And I think we should stay on track to pass the changes prior to year end that are required by the changes in state law. And if we want to address some of these other issues after the year end or after we've passed the ordinance, we can come back and address them. I think at that time, I think the council should retain its own counsel and be receiving independent advice from the town attorney.
And that's the recommendation from the planning commission, John. It's not to take action to change the appeal authority section in the ordinance.
Yeah, I watched that meeting today. So I think we're on track to do the right thing, which is adopt the changes we need to adopt. It's a whole different kettle of fish. And I think there's a lot of things to consider as to why we might be more of an exception to the rule. And until they change the law and require us to not be the appeal authority, I think we'd be better off having a toe in the water with respect to the zoning planning and zoning program in Alta, and I wouldn't be in favor of changing it without a mandate from the state. Will we vote to approve it as written?
No,
No action.
Yeah, there's no
Oh, you don't
so-
want to, you don't want to approve it this time?
Yeah, we have to post it, we have to notice it,
Okay.
those actions.
Well, let me just to try to clarify. I'm in favor of passing what was sent to us by the planning commission. And what's in front of us today, and I appreciate Todd's insights into the changes. Thank you.
me too.
I just had one, in rereading it for the meeting, I had one suggestion that we change, just to give us as much time as the state code legally allows us. The state code has mandated a particular timeline of when certain portions get reviewed. This is in 10, 11, the new 8. Is that right? Or no? Sorry, I have it. It comes up in 10, 11, 9. There are a few places where it just says days, but state code allows us to have up to, for example, 40 business days, which can be a lot more. And so I'd recommend that we just follow the state code on that, just to give us the longest amount of time possible, especially where we are a small town and sometimes things don't, we have to organize getting everyone together for a meeting, that type of thing.
Do you think that this needs to go back to the planning commission for making that change?
No, I don't. Todd, I'll defer to you. This is really your project.
I wouldn't send that back to your planning commission on that kind of a technical change.
Well, I'm not opposed to that change. Just so you know.
Well, it sounds like we have support to put it on the agenda for October. Since we have to get this done by December, at least we can try to get it on the agenda and get it passed with Polly's change, if that works for the staff.
Yes, it does.
Sounds like a good plan.
Is there any other discussion on the amended ordinance? All right, let's get an update from Mike Mon from Alta Ski Area.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello there. My camera not on? Let me fix my camera. There we go. Good afternoon. Just a little update, a few things going on. We're wrapping down. Summer operations are coming to an end. The campground will be officially closed now. And still a few people up and around, but we're no longer actually having people spend the evening out there. The hosts are probably leaving tomorrow for the season. Our projects on the mountain are wrapping down, most of the high ones. The Mambo terrain change project's done. The Sugarloaf Patrol building will probably still have things that will need to be addressed through the end of the month, but it's getting closer to being done. We've completed, as of yesterday, the retaining wall repair project at Alf's. So that one's done. We have probably another 6 to 8 weeks worth of work on the conveyors, the new conveyors on the Albion base, but you can kind of see them. They're evolving a little bit every day along the way. We are starting to with the campground being closed and the visitation down, we're now going to extend our snowmaking utility line up from Alf's up to the campground area. We got about halfway through that project last year. Should be starting that project it's a 2 to 3 week project, probably here, probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. If I know we're starting to stage now for that particular project. You may have noticed that there are some survey stakes and some ribbons and Albion Alps, I believe, development subdivision, or what we call that thing up there, that we had a survey done to identify certain property lines and corners so that we could provide the Forest Service with some information for a couple of projects that we've proposed, and make sure that they're on Forest Service land and where the property lines were. So that is what that's all about. We have a couple of things happening next week. The CWC has organized a legislative visit for members of the Utah legislature and to come up and to Alta and Snowbird and also to Brighton and Solitude. They're going to visit each canyon, kind of visits a chance. They're going to come listen to the ski areas as to what are the challenges and things that we're seeing, what's on our top of our mind. That'll be happening next Thursday on the 19th. We'll be meeting at Snowbird. I think that you're supposed to get there about 9-ish, 10, closer to 10, and be there to about just after lunch, and then they'll go over to Big Cottonwood Canyon. If there's anything, I don't know if the mayor has been invited or not, or someone from the town. It's a good question. I'd have to look and see, but certainly if there are any issues that you would like to make sure we put in front of them, let us know. Then on that following Saturday is our tree planting day at Alta. So we open to the public. We're hoping to plant, and I know we have 1,000 trees. We might have 3,000 trees by then that we're hoping to put into the ground on the 21st. That's kept on coming. The roadside parking replacement project that we have been working with for the Forest Service for a number of years to get approved is still in discussion and being worked through. So we don't know where that exactly is going to shake out as of yet. Tomorrow we will have interstate parkings coming to Alta tomorrow, and we're to talk about this coming winter, as well as it's time for us to renegotiate our contract with them for another period of time, and so we'll be having those discussions with them tomorrow. No really anticipated major changes in parking. Continue the same. We're continuing with the program of complimentary parking for season pass holders and people buy tickets to Alta. $25 will continue to be the reservation rate for public parking. And we're in the process of renewing our MOU with the town of Alta. And I think that's just about completed. Chris would be able to address that more probably. That's our report. Questions you may have for us?
Any questions for Mike?
Opening day, November 22nd? Or have you announced, or do you know, or?
Target opening day is, let me check that. I believe that is correct.
Thanksgiving, I believe.
Yeah, that would be Friday before Thanksgiving, conditions permitting. We are seeing, just for a point of reference, we're very strong interest in working at Alta. I mean, we have hundreds of applicants for jobs at Alta this year. It seems to be a really strong interest in people coming to work in Little Cottonwood Canyon.
Congratulations, that's great.
Any other questions for Mike? All right, next item on the agenda, are there questions regarding the departmental reports?
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
Madam Chair, Jen and I wanted to just make a couple of comments during this department reports portion of the meeting. But I don't want to cut anybody off if they had pre-canned questions for us.
I was just gonna say, well, Brooke. I can't quite see her from where I'm at on the screen because she's over in the corner there, but welcome.
Thank you.
Oh. yeah, why
My
not?
first action item was going to be to introduce Brooke to everyone.
Great.
Wait,
So I was given the floor. Yeah, so Brooke Boone has started, she's in week 2 of working with the town of Alta. She's been mostly working with Molly, training up on the job. Molly has set a very high bar, I think, and Brooke is rising to the occasion, so we're happy to have her in the office and would encourage everybody to, individually say hello and introduce themselves to Brooke moving forward.
Jen, you said a high bar for Molly as well, so.
We continue, that's right, that's what it works out. Do you want me to go into the other stuff? Started?
Yeah, I'll just say that we, from time to time, discover or develop, needs to amend budget. Sometimes those clearly entail the need to do a formal budget amendment, which involves noticing a public hearing, creating all sorts of documentation on a certain timeline and so forth. Sometimes those changes are substantial. Sometimes the need to spend the money is far enough into the future that it's just easy to sequence that stuff. Sometimes the amounts of the changes are small enough and our need to spend the money is urgent enough that we, in the office, we talked about, is this a good time to try to do, I think what Jen calls it, administrative budget amendment or budget adjustment.
Yes.
And we, so I think we're generally just looking to get the council's input on your comfort level with us doing that sort of thing, and then we can provide examples of the topics we'd like to address, either through administrative adjustments or through a budget amendment in the next possible council meeting.
That's a great summary. So I think if you read my staff report, you know that I've been going through an audit with URS, Utah Retirement System. And in that audit, and this information kind of came out after the staff report went out. I do intend to brief the council a little bit more thoroughly on this, but it feeds into what Chris and I are talking about, and I just wanted to kind of bring the council up to speed on it. So we've recognized that there's this become aware of a carve out in the law where a tier 1 judge, so for the justice court judge, basically either we have to be including them in our contributions or they have to exempt out. And so we have not been reporting and paying on our judge. We've been made aware of this. It's fine. There are remedies for these sort of situations. The URS typically likes to go back 4 years. The judge has decided that he does not want to exempt. That would be, harming himself in his own retirement. So I don't blame him for that decision. It's the back pay would be about $4,500 for this. And the annual cost of this is less than $1,500. So really, the back pay is kind of the big part of this potential edit that I want to point out. All in all, if we were to, eventually I'm going to make a recommendation that we amend the budget formally. But this is a roughly $6,000 change in the court budget line item. I have specific line items here, but what I'd like the council's temperature on is a path forward. So we have this situation with the general fund. What I would propose doing is either, option A or option B. Option A would be that I would do a administrative budget adjustment. And I would add that roughly $6,000 to the court budget. And then I would take a corresponding amount out of our contribution to the capital projects fund so that they equal out. The bottom line of the budget never changes. we just kind of do an adjustment. And then in December, when we come to the council, you'll see this stuff reflected. That's option one. Option two is that we come to the council in October with a formal budget amendment process, and we do the public notice with the 10 days, and we actually have the council approve a new budget. If we've really only done, in my experience, an administrative budget adjustment once. And that was when we were doing the wage study a couple of years ago. The council kind of gave the thumbs up on doing that administrative adjustment, and so I just kind of did things internally, and then we shored it up in a budget amendment later. So that's the first one for the general fund. The second thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is in the water fund. And maybe I'll just back up by saying that budget adjustments are allowed as long as they're maintained within the same fund. So the general fund is its own fund, and the water budget is its own fund too. So I can do it's allowed for me to do these administrative things, but again, coming to you as the council to say which path would you like to steer me in. So for the water one, we recognize that from time to time, there's road work that needs to be done. And it's not something that we've really thought about, or that we did think about when we were doing our budget previously. So I could do a budget adjustment that would add $2,000 to the buildings and grounds line item in the water fund. The other item is that.
And that's specifically for work to maintain the road, the portion of the Michigan City Road between Alta Central and the water tank. Which, you know, routinely takes a beating from huge summer rainstorms. So one way or another, we wind up paying typically Alta Ski Area to drive equipment up there and restore the road grade. And generally speaking, the road is in dire need of some additional material, by some estimates, like 20 inches of road base or something like that. So that's something that comes up almost annually.
Okay.
But it's something that comes up almost annually, the need to spend a little bit here, a little bit there. So going forward, I think we'd like to budget for that annually. But we would also like to import some road base and smooth out some key portions of it, you know, this fiscal year. So
And ideally this fall, and that's kind of why I'm bringing it up now, instead of waiting until December to bring it up. The other item is increasing the engineering budget for water projects by about $4,000. This is, I don't know if you want to speak specifically to that and just the feedback you've got.
yeah, so we budget, you know, to be honest and transparent, the engineering line item in the water system budget, I don't understand where those numbers come from. This year we have $15,750 in the budget. As I have been working towards the summer 2025 project to install a water line in Crosto, I've assumed that amount is our engineering budget for the project. When I initially got some back on napkin estimates on what that would cost, that sounded like a decent amount. But as the engineers working on the water and sewer plan have dug into our existing documentation, they point out that the scope of that project set forth in the 2014 study lacks a pressure reducing valve, a major technical component. Probably going to increase the cost of the capital project and will increase the cost of the engineering. So I'm less confident that 15.7 will do it. And I think what we'd like to be able to do is have $20,000 to spend on engineering for that project. And then finally, we've taken some input. I kind of previewed this in the staff report, but taken some input from property owners on the West Peruvian Estates area that the surface of their parking area up there was not left in was not brought back to its pre-existing condition in terms of the grade of the surface, and they slide off it. And so we were quite substantially under budget on that project, and we're proposing to usually adjust the amount of money we spent on the capital projects plan. We have a quote for $5,600 worth of road base installed, transported and installed.
One question on that.
Yeah.
Can we sort of compel the contractor to come back and do that because it wasn't restored properly rather than eat that money? I don't know if you guys asked that question, it just seemed like a logical first step.
It's not a step we've taken, but we certainly could.
My sense is it's more just it was our oversight of the project and not shoring it up, so that's just my gut reaction so far from what I've heard, is that.
Plus, wasn't it done on a design build basis? So like the contractor submitted his bills and got reimbursed for his bills. It wasn't like a GMAX contract.
Right.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think if you
right.
asked him to come back and do it, he would just turn around and send us a bill.
Right, okay.
Right.
Gotcha. All right, no worries. I just wanted to ask the question, save a little money.
Yeah, no,
I
it's
say
a good
something.
question.
Good question though, Dan.
Yeah, and so that project, we had kind of previously considered that complete, and so the funds for that ended in FY 24, and so would like to just kind of like
Yeah.
move a little bit of that money forward, so. Just to kind of summarize, and I know it's hard without any visuals, but what we're talking about would be adjustments in the general fund. Of the tune of just under $6,000, bottom line will stay the same, and then in the water fund. The adjustments would be just under $12,000, it's $11,850 to be exact, that would just shift. And the bottom line would stay the same.
For
So-
the grading on the road.
Yes, that's the grading on the road, that's the engineering and the Michigan City road work, that's all three together. So what I'd like is some feedback from the council, would you prefer? That we just do administrative and adjustment for these, knowing what they are, and then we'll come to you with a formal budget amendment in December, knowing that we're gonna expend this money now? Or would you like us to come to you in October with a budget amendment?
Sounds like it's easier to play first and ask for forgiveness later in December. I wonder if that's something that we can set up on a regular basis, and we would put some type of a cap on how much money you could transfer without having to bring back these kind of amendments.
Didn't we used to have a number like $5,000 was the cap? And we used to have sort of a guideline that if the thing was under $5,000, we would do it administratively? Oh,
So these would both be over that 5,000.
Right. so
But
that's what
I
I'm
do
wondering.
like having guidance, and we're over the 5,000, so.
okay.
Right, and I guess I'm asking if, so you have three items like that, do we need to adjust the $5,000, or do we feel like that's the appropriate number? Or am I not making sense,
Well,
Chris?
I guess what I would say is that, sorry, Lisa, I don't wanna cut you off.
I think that we should do a budget amendment in October. I feel like if this was just one thing, and we were about over the 5, but this is 3 kind of decent sized things. And I think Jen is right. We've only ever done this one administrative before. I do know, in past years, we've had a lot of residents always wondering about our budget and what do we do? And I just feel like we should do this kind of more, hold a public hearing, announce it. We have that $5,000 limit kind of, or I don't know if that's official, but we've always.
It's not, no.
Yeah, so we can talk about doing something like that, I feel like down the road, but I feel like since we don't have anything official, I understand not wanting to do one, but at the same time, we want to spend the money in October in the fall. So I feel like we should probably do one. That our budget amendment in December that we've planned is kind of more for us to look at our sales taxes and kind of get us up to any other projects, which could also come up again. But that's kind of where I'm leaning, just to make it official.
In the spirit of what Lisa's saying too, I think one of the things it allows you to do is capture all of them in one space. You know, hey, and it doesn't adjust the dollar amounts within the general fund or the water fund, but it allows you to put it all in one thing and we can take action on it. So I don't think it'd be too much work for you. So I agree, I think that's, at least I think that's a really great. That's a great
I think
idea.
if it was one thing and it was like $5,400, I'd say, oh, well, we could bend the rule a little bit, but you know, the point is that we're not supposed to be spending money without having had a public hearing. I mean, I think that's like the fundamental tenet, you know? So I'd be in favor of having the public hearing. I also think that I would probably just look at these water fund expenses as water fund expenses of this year, and I wouldn't maybe try to tie them back to that project that's already been closed out. I would just have a line item for, you know, miscellaneous water projects this year or something. I
Yeah, it's the same, it's the same. It's the
tie
same
it back to the
issue.
under spend last year. I'm sorry, were you saying yes to that, Dan?
Yeah, I was just saying it's a similar thing with the Michigan City Road anyway. We're gonna apply, it's the same thing, we're gonna put some dirt down and move it around.
Right, yep. Yeah, regardless of whether there's been a recent capital project or not, like some.
Yeah, like to John's point, like, let's just, you know, it's one more thing you put in there and you can even combine them. We need to grade some stuff and do some fill and it's gonna cost us 17 grand.
Right.
I like this approach. Thank you for the guidance.
And Jen, I think it sounds like because they're two different funds, we need to do two different public hearings, or can we do one?
Each one would be, each fund is its own.
Yeah, they're usually pretty quick.
It'll take up 10 minutes on the.
Well, we like public hearings, so it'd be
Yeah.
cool.
Exactly.
Five.
Sounds good.
Okay. Were there any adjustments or edits to the minutes from last town council meeting in August? Jen?
In the version that, the draft version that I sent to the council, the only change I made when I posted them for this meeting was, we reworked part of the astronomy report. So, someone, the mayor, wanted to be, and it was all fine, it made more sense, just very modest edits. So those were reflected in the version that was posted online and everything. Other than that, there were no other changes that I have heard of yet.
No doubt, those were important. It was off by a parsec.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the August 14th, 2024 minutes, staff and finance reports?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
aye,
Aye. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
yes,
Say,
Yes.
I started that yes business, I feel bad about it.
sorry.
That is the way
I know,
the
that's why.
procedures are written.
Yeah.
and-
It's funny because I've been saying I for as long as I've been on the council, everyone else did it and I just copied them. So all right, next item on the agenda is an update on the water and sewer master plan project and discussion of the water system fire flow. Looks like Chris is heading this up with Casey Carpenter from Salt Lake County Area 3.
I'm gonna take the podium so that Casey can stand with me. Is that okay? Yeah. You willing? Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Casey. Thanks. Well, I guess there are a couple purposes here with this presentation. First, I don't know that Casey has joined a council meeting since he's been the general manager of Salt Lake County Service Area number 3, but presentations and appearances by his predecessor Keith Hansen were always a highlight for the council, I think it's safe to say. So sure, Casey, if you want to introduce yourself.
I think I know most of you here, but for those of you who maybe don't know me, I'm Casey Carpenter. I took over for Keith Hansen, who was the general manager of Salt Lake County Service Area 3 a little over a year ago now. Man, time flies. But yeah, we operate your water system up here. And then I try to spend most of my time down at Snowbird and sort of the bypass road. You know, our sort of jurisdiction is the south side of the creek on the bypass road up to about the Benham house. And then, you know, all the hotels down at Snowbird. Yeah,
Thanks,
this
Casey.
is my first time joining an Alta Town Council meeting, so thanks for having me.
There are usually torches and pitchforks and signs and.
Yeah.
But you're more handsome than Keith,
Mike is-
so.
If you only do to the Benham house, who does the other part? I'm sorry, I missed that. So who does the water for here?
Casey, so
It's owned by the town of Alta. It's all of your infrastructure. We just have a contract where we operate the system.
Right.
And that's, you know, Powder Ridge, kind of the Hellgate area on the north side of the road there, up through Grizzly Gulch. So we're the operators, you guys are the owners.
So Salt Lake County Service Area number 3 is a special district with a boundary, and if your property is inside that boundary, you get your water and sewer services funded by paying a property tax into the district. And here in Alta, you get your services funded by our general fund, supported by all the various revenues that go into that, and these guys contract to operate it. That makes sense.
Yeah, because we pay something.
I was gonna say, so I think where Carolyn might be slightly confused is that the water boundary and the sewer boundary are not the same. So you might be in one, but not in the other.
Sewer is a little different. We do operate the sewer in Powder Ridge, which is outside of the water boundary, but I think it was just easier because it's on the south side of the creek.
Right.
So,
Right, our water line goes down the north side of Little Cotton Creek. And our sewer line goes down the south side. That's turns out the most helpful way for me to remember the differences between the kind of service area boundaries, so. So that's one purpose, thanks Casey. The purposes are to try to provide a little bit more information about our water system in particular. I don't know how well informed that I have been in the past. Especially through doing this project, Water and Sewer Master Plan project. And then to try to explain a bit of what we know about deficiencies on the system, especially with regard to fire flow. I know we've had comments at council meetings recently about the need to make sure we address fire flow deficiencies in this water and sewer master plan project. And so what follows is just a few notes on that. And just go to the first side. So our water system is a pretty simple machine compared to other municipal culinary systems. Kind of the nucleus of it is the antimony treatment plant at the Bay City Tunnel. The water comes from about 2,000 feet behind the bulkhead on the tunnel. Water gets pumped out of the Bay City Tunnel primarily up to a 365,000 gallon storage tank. That's again kind of up on the Michigan City Road, uphill and a little bit to the northwest of the Bay City Tunnel. There is a 10,000 gallon tank in Grizzly Gulch that's fed, I believe, just by pressure of the system. Generally, that's correct.
the 10,000 gallon tank in Grizzly Gulch, water gets pumped to, there's a few pumps in the Bay City building. Yeah, basically the water goes up to the main Alta tank, it comes back, goes back into the Bay City building, and then from there it gets pumped to the 10,000 gallon tank with just a few small pumps in the building there.
Cool. So beyond that, those technical components, we've got pipes, we've got 2.5 miles of pipes. Many or most of them were installed in the 70s, kind of when the water system was being built anew. Many of them are still made out of PVC. We have pressure reducing valves in at least one location on the system. How many pressure reducing valves do we have, Casey? Two. One is in the West Peruvian states neighborhood. Where's the other one?
The other is the Alta Lodge Roto.
That's it. That's the other period. Okay. About 25 fire hydrants, 86 connections to the system. The valve between Alta and Snowbird, really between the service area and the town of Alta system, is important. That provides us redundancy and emergency support. Our inventory of recent improvements is not all that substantial. I mean, we did a couple major projects last summer. That's really the biggest and most expensive improvement to the water system that's been completed in the 10 years that I've been at the town. Again, that was a replacement of that PRV and water line upgrade in West Peruvian. The water line up in Grizzly was replaced. You know, that was kind of an adventure for the contractor and for the service area. And then there have been kind of a number of relatively modest pipe upgrades in the past decade or so. The pipe into the Albion parking lot to feed the ski area buildings down there was upsized, and that did yield an improvement in fire flows down there, which is great, as that was one of the deficiencies we identified in 2014. We have a loop up the Westward Hoe Road from Powder Ridge that connects back into the main line down in the Wildcat parking lot area, basically. And then there've been a couple of other minor pipe upgrades over the last, again, decade or so is kind of where my knowledge goes back to. And I'm looking forward to this water master plan project providing us with a better documentation of the history of system improvements. So a lot of our perspective on this hinges on this 2014 capital improvements analysis. The town hired Forstman Associates, and then Keith at the service area used the hydraulic model created a few years prior, and a list of capital projects developed back when that model was produced to find ways to improve fire flows and redundancy on the system. So we're kind of taking the outcomes of that, which generally have not been implemented. The only major element of that that has been implemented in the past 10 years is that Westward Hoe Loop. So we're taking those projects into this 2024 master planning effort. We're doing updated water modeling, hydraulic model. Those 2014 projects are already in the updated water model, which isn't finalized yet. And the basic scope of work that follows is, we'll assess the sewer, we'll evaluate remaining system capacity and future needs, and then all of that will help us prioritize a list of capital improvement projects for the council to adopt. And that screenshot on the right is a picture of the water model from that 2014 study. Again, so highlights, I think I've talked through most of this. The specific findings are that, at least according to the 2014 study and the regulations in place at that time, our storage volumes may be deficient to the tune of about 60,000 gallons in order to meet fire flow requirements in duration. So 1,500 gallons per minute by 2 hours is what we are shooting for, essentially. And that is the metric against which the 2014 projects were compared in that 2014 study. The 2014 study indicates, and the water model we're working on supports that we do meet those requirements in most of the system. But there are still a couple deficient areas. The primary offenders are Grizzly Gulch, where fire flows are quite low. I'm not prepared to cite those. And then Alta Central, the Alta Central buildings, the guard stations and the town office are also a little bit low. Albion Base area and Hellgate. I don't know whether the pipe upgrade in the Albion parking lot brought that up to 15 gallons a minute or 1,500 gallons per minute for 2 hours. But having finally plugged that into an updated hydraulic model, we do believe that that's yielded a pretty substantial improvement in fire flows down there. And then Hellgate, where we had kind of one of our two big structure fires up here in Alta in recent memory. We were a little bit short of that 1,500 gallons per minute for 2 hours figure down in Hellgate. And I went ahead and added the 2014 study to the website. There's a link in this PDF, which we'll post on the website. That should be a live link, and you can click through and find that on the website if you want to read the whole study.
Will those predictions change if the Schwanz estate moves to any type of further development?
Great question.
Well, I guess what I would say is the Schwanz estate as proposed and would be required to provide additional infrastructure. A part of the system may entail a storage tank. And something that was negotiated in the settlement agreement is that there would be some shared use of that. So that would a storage tank in Grizzly, a larger storage tank in Grizzly, however it were to be developed, would certainly improve fire flows throughout the system, as well as in Grizzly Gulch in particular. The Schwanz estate development, depending on so many factors, would impact our future demand and the remaining culinary water we can serve. Did that answer your question?
It does, I'm just trying to think ahead if you're proposing some changes that, you know, that probably should be taken into consideration, because once you started digging a hole and you got people up there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, that's certainly part of the process. I mean, we'll talk more about this, I think, further into the project. That's certainly the biggest potential additional development that occur in Alta. There's not much residential development available. It's under current zoning. Commercial properties could be redeveloped. But everyone is going to face a similar constraint in terms of how much culinary water we can serve. So, anyways, state regulations and fire code set up what feels to me like a fairly complex kind of hall of mirrors of regulations that determine what requirements we're under as we design and install new drinking water improvements. This is a list of highlights. I have a link to the state drinking water rule there on the right, R309. I've known that citation off the top of my head for some time, but this is the first time that I'm kind of looking at it from this perspective of facility design. Many of these regulations were in place in 2014 when we did that study. That study found that we generally satisfy this first minimum water pressure requirement, except for in I believe 2 out of something like 30 or 40 nodes on the system. One of those is in Grizzly, another one is in fact at Alta Central, according to that 2014 study. Moving on, this R309 510-8, this is the regulation that seems to put our storage volumes somewhat out of compliance with the volumes and flow duration that we need to provide fire flows, as well as peak day demand. The calculation sort of includes fire flows and then other demands on the system that might be required while we're fighting a fire simultaneously. Where it gets a little bit tricky is is with fire code, and I have to confess, fire code is not something I've worked with a tremendous amount before becoming the town manager. One way that we satisfy state requirements for fire flows is by requiring fire sprinklers. These are some tables, table B in the International Fire Code that determine how much fire flow you need at certain kinds of property in order to fight fire, in order to get building permit primarily. Again, with that caveat being that the local fire code official can require sprinklers, which can dramatically reduce the amount of flow that's required to comply with fire code at a development. So this is a residential table. And as you can see, again, the sprinkler requirement can be pretty helpful. The next slide just has a snapshot of the commercial requirements for commercial developments. Those numbers do start to get pretty significant when you look at the fire flow gallons per minute. with buildings of a certain square footage. I think our biggest buildings in Alta are in the 70,000 to 80,000 square foot range. Again, I believe we typically met those requirements in the past by requiring sprinklers, but also at 70 to 80,000 square feet, we're looking at 2,700 to 3,000 gallons per minute for a certain number of hours, and we're actually relatively close to those numbers, and we can get there with the system improvements we've designed in the past and are kind of reevaluating presently.
From this 2014 pump system that you got, the hydraulic system that you've got there.
The model.
That model will give you what you're looking for.
Close, if not exactly, but again, sprinkler requirements are in place, and that allows the fire marshal to kind of give you a break on those requirements. Okay, so the current project, this is yet another pretty summary view of the scope of work. The status is that Hanson Allen Luce basically kicked off the project the first week of August. So we've been working for 5 weeks. They're almost done updating the water model. I would say the kind of documentation and existing conditions gathering, information gathering has taken a little bit longer because we just don't have a great inventory of it. Our GIS data is quite fragmented and out of date. So the best piece of data we have to actually illustrate, like on a map, the system is that 2011 water model. So we've got all sorts of great input coming to those guys from the people who built the improvements and operate the system about exactly what the existing system entails. And yeah, again, that model is almost complete. As part of that existing conditions gathering, we're already in progress on the evaluation of the system. But that should involve some field work and site visits coming up here in the next little while. We had a really it was a good meeting yesterday. We had Casey and Steve McIntosh, who's of course our sewer operator currently, but worked at the service area for many years before retiring from that gig. We had our engineers from Hanson Allen Luce, and then we had the fire marshal and the deputy fire marshal who's responsible for Alta, Chief Torgerson, joined that meeting. So that was a fascinating conversation, really between the technical experts about how state code and fire code work together to help us design the system. And then the ways that we compel builders to essentially interface with the system that we have, right? So we do have ways that we can get around providing 6,000 gallons per minute of fire flow on the town system if somebody's going to propose a building that large. So that was a great meeting, and the engineers are going to prepare a memo on the regulations we're working under. I'll share that with the council. That to me I've felt some urgency about understanding that complex situation, and I want to ensure the council that we're doing what we can to make sure that we comply with regulations and provide the best service that we can financially, and that makes sense in this environment. And then the remainder of the scope of work, we'll have to have a conversation about system growth. On paper, there's not much additional development that can occur in Alta, but it gets a little trickier when we talk about redevelopment, and of course our surplus water contract with Salt Lake City, which has a fairly finite cap to it. And then we'll make a plan. We'll develop a capital improvements plan. We'll have some updated cost estimates, and we'll ask you to adopt it.
Nice. Pardon my new guy question, but I like asking them. Identifying the capital improvements in this area, we hadn't, that's not included in those other areas that we've been looking at this year. Isn't that part of haven't we already integrated some of this into our capital improvements?
Maybe what you're talking about is the water project we're gearing up to try to do next summer.
Which is, separate from any other improvements that are included in this.
Well, this is just a planning project. It's a planning and engineering project. So this is just, we have a contract with several engineers to do the master plan, we'll have a list of projects that comes out of this, I hope by essentially the beginning of 2025. And in the Town of Alta capital projects plan for the water system, we went ahead and programmed in really pretty rough estimates for a major capital improvement on the water system every other year, beginning next fiscal year. And we took those projects out of the 2014 study. We essentially doubled the cost. And that's
Just give you a rough order of magnitude, and
yeah,
but that's what we've seen.
correct.
Okay.
Yes, and I have that on a slide coming up.
Nice.
And then we are simultaneously, I think if you go to the next slide, I can just talk a little bit more about this project for next summer. So it's actually not the priority in the 2014 study. The 2014 study of all the projects it analyzed and recommended the number one recommendation from that study was that Hellgate Loop. It's kind of the most bang for the buck to correct a non-deficiency. A line along the transfer toe, kind of the center of town looping feature, actually appears as two separate projects in the study. But the Skirit, as we've discussed, the Skirit is pursuing a project to install a pretty significant amount of utilities along the transfer toe road, Boston Road, next summer. So we figured we would see if we can partner. Thank you, guys. Thank you. We figured we would see if we can partner with the Skirit to save costs on excavation and mobilization. They've been amenable to that. They've gone ahead and gotten kind of a conditional Forest Service NEPA approval on our installation of a water line in the trench. So that's great. That presumably takes care of Forest Service approval for essentially the whole line, the whole kind of horizontal segment of that project. Yeah, the benefits that the 2014 suggests we realize for this are better fire flows kind of throughout a commercial core, downtown Alta from the cat shop to the Peruvian, and obviously a huge redundancy upgrade. We think it will essentially improve function of the entire water system, and again, provide redundancy kind of in the center of town there. The engineers working on the 2024 on our current master planning project have found some discrepancies with the scope of work for this project outlined in that 2014 study. The big one to me is, that again, the project scope for these does not include a pressure reducing valve. That's a pretty significant, it's a technical component, it's a hunk of steel, so it will increase the project costs and the sort of engineering burden on the project. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out, that we sort of covered that in a conversation about administrative budget adjustments or budget amendments. Anyway, so I am doing what I can to polish off a solicitation for engineering. Hope to publish a very quick request for proposals to hire engineers, and then get those guys up here before the snow flies to do some surveying. We do still have to get a minor Forest Service approval for that additional segment that the ski area won't be trenching next summer up by the cat shop. And then the whole thing would have to get approval from the state. And then we would have to figure out how to pay for it, which I didn't put on the slide. The last slide is just a view of that water system capital projects plan. Thanks, Dan, for kind of helping me preview this. The council adopted this in June when we adopted the budget and the capital projects plan for the fiscal year. As you can see, the water projects we are doing this fiscal year are hopefully finishing up the remote water meter install project. Casey's mostly working that. Jen, thank you guys. And then this the study that's funded at $25,000. And that's the information I had to share with you today. I don't know if you have any questions? Any reflections on this, reactions?
I might miss this again a little bit, so bear with me, but what the areas we're talking about are not really slated against 26 or 28. None of that stuff's slated against anything here yet. Do you see it? Do you see what we're talking about here going against one of these years? That was kind of
so-
my question, is like
So basically, the bottom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Yep,
line items on this are from the 2014 study. And those are projects, I believe, actually
Okay.
initially developed in 2011. Analyzed for sort of their effect on fire flows in 2014. We've built these into the water model, the engineers have built this into the water model. So that we can kind of verify their impact. And by the end of the project, excuse me. By the end of the planning project, we'll have a new recommendation to prioritize these projects and cost estimates. Will that change the way that we have these programmed out in the capital improvement plan for the water system? I don't know, but that's the relationship. Is that?
yeah, I got, okay, I'm tracking. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, I know that Keith was always bugging us to keep improving and keep working on projects. So I'm glad we did this, and hopefully we can keep to our commitment of doing something every other year or more frequently if it's possible to find the funding. Like I said, Keith was always up here every year saying that we had deficiencies and we needed to update them. So it's good to know we're going to get a more updated study and model.
And I guess I would say there is a chance that when we're done with this project, when we have updated cost estimates, we could potentially, yes, we could think about financing doing these projects in a more rapid succession. The every other year sequence is based a little bit on kind of some rate increase projections that I think John Byrne kind of worked on a couple years ago, maybe. But that's just one way to contemplate funding the funding projects and one cadence of project delivery. So there are other options. We just need some updated figures.
Right, there might be some economies of scale of combining certain projects and executing them simultaneously, so that could change the timeline. And, these would be really tiny amounts to finance, so if we aggregated them, we could actually start to think about maybe either having a loan or a bond to execute the balance of them. But it's sort of one off. It's not good. The underwriting costs are going to be too much of a burden to come up with $200,000 or $300,000. But if we had $2 or $3 million worth of projects we wanted to commit to do over like a 2-year period, then I think the funding sources would be a bigger universe of potential funding sources. No question in my mind. No question. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, no, I think in the spirit of what you're saying, I also think by combining them, we can compress the projects and reduce some of the disruption it provides on town and recreation as well. So I think I'm hip to that.
Totally agree with you. Some of them I think naturally makes sense to combine. So I'm looking forward to the study. Thanks for that update, Chris. That was a good update.
Thanks, Sean.
Will you shoot those slides out?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, well, we're rolling right on schedule here. Does anyone have any new business?
Thanks, Casey.
Sitting next to you.
Yeah. it worked out really well.
Nice, figured that.
Hang on next to him again.
You know?
Okay, well, no new business. I guess Chris, I wanted to thank you for sending out the email about our potential another town retreat. So hopefully everyone's gotten back to Chris with some dates at work, because I know that it can be busy in November for some people and early December. So if you haven't replied to Chris, please do so. And
Incentive.
Yeah,
That's right. Sorry, I forgot the courtesy text to you, Carol. I can, if you'd like.
I'm looking for it.
I can forward it to you when I get to it.
And on that note, I guess we'll have a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
again,
All right, all in favor?
Yes.
yeah.
Who was the second? I'm sorry, that wasn't clear to me.
I think it was John.
Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, everybody. I will sign off from Vermont.
Have a good time.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have